Welcome to the Healthy Heart Show, where we pull back the curtain on conventional medicine and dive into the root causes of cardiovascular health. If you are concerned about high cholesterol, high blood pressure, heart attacks, stroke, or atrial fibrillation, this is the place for you. We will provide natural heart information that will help you prevent, treat, and reverse any ailment, leaving pills and procedures out of the picture. Here are your guides to holistic heart health, board-certified cardiologist and Amazon best-selling author, Dr. Jack Wolfson, and natural heart doctor, naturopathic physician, Dr. Lauren Latanza.
Hello, everyone. Dr. Jack Wolfson, board-certified cardiologist at Natural Heart Doctor. Welcome to another episode of the Healthy Heart Show, where we give you the best information, bring you the best guests, all with the idea of helping you achieve your 100-year heart. And we are into the new year. We are recording right now, and it's snowy and cold here in Colorado, so I'm dressed for the occasion, but I've got a wonderful guest with me today. Her name is Kelly Kennedy, and I'm going to say hello to Kelly, and then I'll give you her bio. Kelly, what's up?
Thank you so much. Hello, Dr. Jack. Thank you so much for having me. I am so thrilled to talk to your community.
And the topic you're going to be bringing today is all about lymphatics. And if you don't know what lymphatics are, you're going to learn so much today. And it really could be just a secret biohack to help you achieve health and wellness. So let's just talk about Kelly real quick. You know, like many who enter the world of biological and energetic healing, Kelly Kennedy has had her own traumatic experiences that stimulated her in finding another approach to health. And that's what I would say too, Kelly, is that again, like a lot of the best people, either they suffered personally or, close family members who did. In my case, again, close family members who suffered, and again, seeing sickness all around me. And Kelly started her training more traditionally when she was at Cornell University with a desire to be an allopathic medical doctor. That seems to be a common theme as well. Like people were on their way to going to medical school or even in medical school and said, you know what, this isn't right for me. Then one particular year, she was faced with her own health challenges. And then also the premature passing of her father. These experiences confirmed what Kelly intuitively knew within her bones, that good health was not restored through prescriptions. After 23 years of building a health and wellness practice based in bioregulatory medicine, Kelly is now paving the way for a new wellness system to blossom. And you can find Kelly in a lot of different places. Again, she helps people at the True Wellness Center in North Wales, Pennsylvania, and in Bluffton, South Carolina. You can find Kelly virtually at notmedsglobal.com. And again, she's on YouTube and Instagram, and then she's got an incredible podcast called The Beats with Kelly Kennedy and many other things going on. So with that being said, Kelly, that's a pretty impressive bio and story, right? Tell me more about, if you don't mind, some of your health issues, and tell me about what happened to your father.
Yeah, so it's funny because I don't listen to my bio very often anymore, and listening to it again reinforces why I do this. And it's so nice to have that reminder. And I grew up in a family with chronic illness. My father had Hodgkin's disease. He had cancer many times, 7 times. And that's why I wanted to be a doctor, because I didn't want to get cancer. Nobody could tell me how to not get cancer. Nobody could tell me if it was hereditary at the time or not. And we didn't know much about Hodgkin's disease back then. So I was like, maybe if I become a doctor, I'll figure it out. And in my first semester at Cornell, I was in a car accident. And I was left with a couple compressed vertebrae. I lost about 2.5 inches in height. I have a 12-inch scar on my head. I was scalped in the accident and I lacerated my spleen. And at 20 years old, as a collegiate rower, living now on painkillers and muscle relaxers, 1 month later, my father had a stroke. His first stroke. 5 months later, he had a second stroke. He never got out of the hospital, laid in the hospital bed for 5 months, and died at 55 years old. And at the time, I was 8 months out of this car accident, or 11 months out of the car accident, living on painkillers and muscle relaxers. Also had horrible allergies my whole life. So I was living on pharmaceuticals for that. I was living on pharmaceuticals for my horrible period, and pharmaceuticals for something else. I can't remember now what. Oh, allergies, asthma, and acne. Then I got the car accident. So by the time this was all said and done, I was on 6 medications at 20 years old. My father dies at 55 look, and they said chronologically it was closer to like 90 because of all the chemo and radiation he had. And I was like, they don't really have this figured out. Like, I'm a collegiate rower, athletic, and I was told never to exercise again, basically sit in a chair and manage my pain and go to support groups. And my 55-year-old father was dead. And I was like, maybe there's another way. So I started to research for my own personal health, really, because I didn't want to live on painkillers, muscle relaxers, and manage pain the rest of my life. So I just saw everything under the sun, from hypnotherapist to orthopedic specialist to pain specialist to acupuncturist, chiropractics, everything in the middle. And that's when I discovered this whole energetic world and met the gentleman who eventually became my husband, who was the first, quote, healer. He hates that word, but the first energetic person who muscle tested me, did some emotional work, and made a change in my pain. And I didn't understand how he did it. I just knew that I never wanted my pain to come back. So how did you do it? As I was weaning off of Vicodin and Flexerol, and his answer was energy. And my answer, I have a very G-rated podcast, Dr. Jack. I don't know what your podcast is like, so I'll keep it G-rated. But I was definitely like, what the blank did you do? And how do we make sure it doesn't come back? And what the heck are you talking about with energy? Because I didn't understand what energy was. I was more physical medicine based. I understood that, but I didn't understand this energy field. And so we started studying in Switzerland at the Paracelsus Biological Medicine Clinic over there with Dr. Thomas Rao, and then a bunch of his colleagues, and it's expanded over the last 20 years to really understand the terrain medicine and the biological medicine field, and looking at the dental piece and the lymphatics. And I had my scar helped and my lymph work done. I was already pain-free for about 10 years when we found the science behind this energy. So I found this guy, he told me it was energy. I didn't understand what he meant, but I said, I'm not going to leave you until I figure it out. It was about 10 years later, we were introduced to this group out in Switzerland that had the science of terrain medicine that explained this energy behind what this was all talking about. Because I'm very much like tangible, fact-based evidence person. I was raised Catholic, and it never made sense to me because I couldn't touch what they were talking about, right? And when I got into this and my healing happened and I couldn't explain it, and the only guy that could explain it said energy. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? I know what ions are across, around the nucleus, but what are you talking about? And it took 10 years for us to be introduced to the outfit in Europe that had the science behind this energy, this terrain medicine, this biological approach. And that's when I became like a kid in a candy store. There was microscopes, there was regulatory testing, there was all this empirical based data beyond blood work, prior to blood work, really, because it's talking about more the regulation of the body, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, and the ability of the body to heal itself, that I started to understand the science and became like, I'm an avid student, and I just was like, I want to read more. I want to see more. I want to learn more. I want to go to every medical conference I can in Europe so we can learn more about this. And I was already well. I felt great. I had no symptoms at that point, but we were plagued with all these clients that were chronically ill, chronic pain, and I didn't really have a great way to help them. My husband was helping them in certain ways with emotional pieces and nutrition and the stuff he was doing. I didn't know how I was going to help them. And I started doing regulatory testing, and literally everybody showed their lymphatics were clogged, and they were trying to detox, they were trying to get their amalgams out, but they couldn't tolerate it because they were feeling so symptomatic, so sick. And I started to look at this lymphatic system. I was like, well, that's the space around the cells. That's the extracellular matrix. That's the space that all the junk is. That's our trash can. And everybody's got to take out their trash. And that's how I became the quote lymph queen about 10, 12 years ago, because I started to this is the frontier that nobody's looking at. And it's so important because it's a circulatory system. And we got to really look at how the junk is taken out of the body, because I firmly believe at this point, our job as an organism is to make sure that the toxins go out faster than they come in. That's our job.
All right. So if you can break down again, the lymphatic system. So without us having the anatomy chart up here, we can talk about how the arteries supply, through the blood and, nutrients to the body. And of course, through the veins, bring back waste to be, disposed of, from the lungs. And of course, the arteries, again, we, dispose of waste through our gut, through our kidneys, through our skin. But it's kind of like this unsung hero is that lymphatic system. So again, kind of give us a good visualization again as to what the lymphatic system is and really what it means for that to be functioning appropriately.
So thank you. Great question. So from the top of our head to the tip of our toes, we have lymphatic vessels and nodes. Much like our circulatory system, it's highways that travel throughout the body. And the average adult has between 600 and 1,000 lymph nodes, which is a pretty large, variance between 600 and 1,000 because everybody's body size is different. And nodes they're mostly concentrated around our joint areas. So our neck, our arms, our shoulders, our wrists, our knees, our hips. And essentially the way to think about it, the way I think about it, because I live in Philadelphia area and we have high congestion of our traffic here. So it's much like highways. You can think about the lymphatic system as the highways throughout the body, and the nodes are the toll booths, right? So if a toll booth is closed, there's no traffic going through it. So you can have all the proper vessels, but the nodes themselves, if they're not working, then there's no traffic going through it. And the majority of our nodes are in our neck and our gut. And the last nodes, the ending nodes, are right here above our clavicles, they drain then into the heart. And then the heart circulates them out, and then it expands out to all the emunctory organs, like you were talking about, the liver, the kidneys, the lungs, the skin, and we excrete out our toxins after the heart does its job of circulating it through the lungs. Well, what it's doing, it has capillaries, blind-ended capillaries that are one directional. So these highways are more like conveyor belts that only go in one direction. So all the traffic's moving in one direction. It collects, they're collector ducts that collect all the trash. They open up at one end like a flower, and they collect all the extra fluid. And not only proteins and fats and nutrients, but our toxicants and our pathogens travel throughout these vessels. And the vessels, which are like these conveyors, move up to the node, and the node is like the toll booth, the door that it needs to go through. When that content, that fluid, the lymphatic fluid, which we have twice as much lymphatic fluid as we do blood, twice as much. So when that fluid is collecting all that and it gets up to the node's job is to identify what's in there. Is that a gas we keep? Is that a toxicant we get rid of? Do we need to create a macrophage, a white blood cell for this toxicant or this allergen or this pathogen? And it produces the proper white blood cell, the attacker, the killer cell, right? And then it translates that throughout the body. What we have found is that a lot of the vessels are working, but the nodes are closed. And we'll talk about why. So in a perfect system, though, essentially, you've got twice as much fluid as blood circulating throughout the whole body on these conveyor belts going up to the nodes. The nodes identify the pathogens, the toxicants, the nutrients, the gases, and it continues to circulate throughout the body. It then takes all of it, dumps it into the cardiovascular system. The cardiovascular system, which you're so brilliant at, the natural heart doctor extraordinaire, then takes all that and circulates it throughout all the organ systems. We pee, we poop, we sweat, and we breathe out our toxins. And I would postulate that we bleed, for those women out in the audience, that science has not proven this yet, but I do believe that soon we're going to see that the prostate and the ovaries are all part of the lymphatic system. That's my theory, not proven in science. Kelly Kennedy's theory from doing lymph work for 15 years.
No, fantastic. And again, this is the Healthy Heart Show. I'm Dr. Jack Wolfson, cardiologist with Kelly Kennedy. As people know her as the lymph queen. And again, really just talking about how important the energetics of the body and how that interacts with the lymphatic system. And in order to have a healthy lymphatic system, again, so many different factors go into that. We'll discuss that in a few minutes. And of course, Kelly's going to do a demo for those of you who are able to watch on video, but she'll be able to describe it for those that are listening on audio as well. And Kelly, you shared the story of your father and Hodgkin's. Certainly my experience is not with Hodgkin's as far as the diagnosis of Hodgkin's lymphoma. And then a lot of those, was heavily skewed towards young men having chemotherapy, but mostly radiation in the center of the chest. And then all of those men invariably 20 years later were left with the effects of the radiation, which is one of the many reasons why I'm against any form of radiation, CT scans, nuclear studies, all these radiation-based testing. And what happens is that all those people wound up with coronary artery disease, valvular heart disease. And when you damage all those tissues with that radiation, right, Kelly? I mean, how much does that impact the lymphatic system? Does that cause, sclerosis of the thoracic duct and some of these other, lymphatic drainage points? And before you answer that, I do again want to remind everyone who's listening and watching, everything we talk about pertains back to the heart. In this particular show, everything we talk about pertains to everything. But again, whatever your cardiovascular issue is and you're listening to this program, I can assure you that what Kelly and I are discussing and the lymphatic system could be definitely will be part of your healing strategy.
Thank you for saying that, Dr. Jack, because that's one of the reasons I was so excited to align with you, because there's not many cardiologists, as you well know, that understand the world of which we live in our terrain medicine and biological medicine. And I have always felt that a heart doctor, cardiologist, knows more, or cardiothoracic surgeon knows more about the lymphatics than any other subspecialty, because the lymph and the cardiovascular system work hand in hand. And, the Starling principle proved to us about 9 years ago, that we have now discovered through science that it's no longer the understanding of the medical community, even that the vascular system is the system where the venal system is where we excrete our toxins. They now have verified that 80% of our toxicants move through the lymphatic system, and they have to work together. And so everybody needs, the heart stops, we're done. We know that, right? So we need to maintain our heart health. But from doing heart rate variability testing that I've done for 15 years, I do a Nerve Express test, which was designed by a cardiologist in Russia by the name of Dr. Alex Riftin. And he uses it to train Navy SEALs and to train athletes. And so it's really a health detection, not a disease finder, right? It's really extreme because he's a cardiologist and he put all these parameters in, and I've learned his test for years. It was about 6 years ago maybe 8 years ago, I started looking at it and going like, why are the triathletes in here, the Ironmans, and their heart rate variability sucks? I don't understand it. Like their chronotrophic and vascular recovery was absent. Then I would do one lymph session, put them back on the heart rate variability, and all of a sudden they'd have all this cardiovascular health. And I'm like, but they didn't exercise. They didn't do anything. They just moved their lymph. And I started to go, wow, that's really a big piece of this, that if somebody comes in and they have a heart problem, we got to first back it up, go upstream a little bit. What's dumping into the cardiovascular system is always my question. The lymph fluid should be thin like water, like fluid, but it gets thicker with sedentary lifestyles, with Wi-Fi, with improper food, with acids from improper thoughts and emotions, which is a huge component to lymph, which we need to talk about. From metals, from chemicals, from scars on the physical body. These are the things that make the lymph thick instead of thin. So if I'm dumping thick jelly-like fluid through the cardiovascular system, of course it's going to struggle to get through. If I thin that out by pumping the lymph and making these conveyor belts move faster so it gets up to that door, and that door is now open, the cars can go through, if you're following my analogy, then what will happen is the fluid that the heart is now circulating is better and easier for the heart to manage. And now it looks like they have better heart health when really they have better lymph health, because you cannot separate these. It's like separating out mind and body, right? Oh, we work in the mind body facility arena. Really? Who's separating that out? Who's deciding that I'm working on the body, you're working on the mind? I would postulate that every practitioner you ever see is working on mind and body. They might not be conscious of it, but they're working on it. And because you can't not, the bedside manner matters, whether you're conscious of it or not. If you're a gruff, rough doctor, you're not going to have the same client base as somebody who's nice and sweet and awesome and can really build that relationship with you, and they're going to get a better result. So a little tangent, but I love that.
I mean, I often tell people that when they're interviewing other doctors, just to make sure that, again, like you interview them, and maybe this is a chiropractor, or whether you're interviewing a doctor or even a lymphatic practitioner, for example, or someone who does massage or other forms of body work. Again, when you resonate with someone, then you're going to want to work with that person. And if you don't resonate, then that's time again to, find somebody else. Because I do believe that frequency, that being on the same page, if you will, having that connection, I think is absolutely critical. And I think that's kind of sometimes where, over the years, maybe since meeting my wife and her introducing me into massage, if you go to like a hotel and get a massage, you're just like a number over there, as opposed to if you go to someone who really has care and dedication, stuff like that. I think it makes a huge difference. Kelly, before we get into the how we can really help people with their lymphatic system, do you have, maybe some case studies or just some ideas as far as, again, in the cardiovascular arena, how does improving lymphatics help people with, coronary artery disease, cholesterol abnormalities, atrial fibrillation, cardiomyopathy? Do you have any experience individually with some of those people, or would you say it's just more of a generalized thing that, again, once you improve the lymphatics, every condition gets better?
So B, for sure. We deal with plenty of diagnosis. We're not medical doctors, so I can't diagnose anybody. I can't treat anything other than general wellness and well-being. I want to back up, though, before I continue and answer that and talk about the radiation. I absolutely agree with you that radiation causes scarring in the lymphatics and the fascia. My father had his stroke right above, in his right side of his neck, where maybe 5-6 years previous, they had removed a fair amount of lymph nodes for lymphoma, and they had done a skin graft from his leg there to the point where he had an indent, it was concave there at that part of his neck. And there was a big scar around it. That is exactly where they did the radiation. They removed the lymph nodes, and guess where he had the strokes? And when I, at 23 years old or 20 years old, said to the nurse at the time, well, don't you think he had the stroke right there because the vessels were weakened because of the radiation? Honey, you don't know what you're talking about. It has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
So
it had 100% to do with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was I didn't know anything about the lymph at that point, but to back up, or to go back to your question, we don't treat diagnoses. We therapize and work with the individual. We help them see what the blockades to their healing are to make sure they don't have scars or dental foci that might be blocking their autonomic nervous system from working. Because what we know is that the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, that autonomic nervous system, is the only thing in the body that heals outside of mechanistic healing. You get a knife stuck in your heart, please send me to the cardiothoracic surgeon and badge up my heart. I'm not going to be doing that with homeopathics and prayers. But after that, the chronicity of it, that inflammation, getting rid of the trauma and allowing the body to heal, the body does that. It sends the platelets, the white blood cells, and all the cytokines, and gets everything working, and then taking the trash out. And our job as practitioners, I feel, is to support the body to do that while removing the blockades. When we do that, anything can cause anything. It's never one thing that causes one thing. It's typically multi-causational. So you walk in with high cholesterol, it could be diet, it could be stress, it could be lack of exercise. It's probably a combination of all three of those things. And maybe some genetics potentials have been turned on because of lifestyle habits, thought processes, and so forth. So when we look at a human being, we're looking at all aspects of their life, but first and foremost, are they getting their toxins out faster than they're coming in? And if we can drain out their toxins, then what we find is a myriad of things change. First is their typical circadian rhythms fall into place. So we find most common, oh, I'm pooping more regularly, I'm sleeping more regularly, and my cycle, if they're females, have normalized. Well, these are 3 indicators that their body's healthier than it was before they started doing lymph. And then all of a sudden, maybe we support them with supplements or lifestyle changes, whatever. And then they continue to watch their lab work with their medical doctors and go, wow, my cholesterol went from 240 to 180 in the last 3 months. And all I changed was I started changing my lifestyle stuff a little bit and draining my lymph. Do I have case studies? No. I mean, I would love to say that I have the time, the energy, and the resources to sit around all day like I would like to and document everything we're doing in research. But I see clients every day. I write content. I'm doing podcasts. But that is one of my goals for 2023 is to document all that we're doing and to be able to have the empirical based data. I mean, I test everything. I'm a wonderful scientific skeptic. So I can feel something, like do a therapy and go, wow, that feels great. But let's test the heart rate variability before and after, and let's make sure that I'm actually getting better. Let's do a live blood before and after to make sure I'm getting better. Let's do a CRT, contact regulation thermography, to ensure that my regulatory capacities are improving, that it's not just a clinical, like, oh, that made me feel good, but it didn't do anything to my physiology.
With circulation, with arterial blood flow, it's pretty easy to see circulation. Obviously, you can visualize things under ultrasound. You can, of course, do a physical examination. You can check pulse. You can check pulse pressure. You can check a lot of different things. Are there any objective ways to measure lymphatic function? Outside of, again, I'm sure obviously physical examination is a way to measure lymphatic function. Heart rate variability would be another surrogate marker. Is there anything a little bit more definitive? And if not, then, what else are we going to use to show kind of, improvement?
Yeah. And I would love better testing for it. I don't know how we can do it because it's an ever flowing system that's, physically moving. And so and maybe ultrasound would be, I think you could probably measure it from that perspective, but that's how I got into this, was a measurable markers for the lymphatics through the contact regulation thermography. So let me explain what that system is. So there's lots of people that do thermograms, which are pictures, and a lot of people know it for breast exams. Instead of doing a mammogram, they'll do a thermography test, which takes a picture of the temperature of the breast, and hot spots are red and proper normal natural regulation is blue, and green is kind of in the middle of red and blue. And so you want all blue, no red. Okay. But really it's just looking at the breast. They now have full body thermographies. So they're looking at temperature changes. You want everything to be within a range of proper temperature, but they're looking at a static beam. The thermography test that we do and employ from Europe is looking at, here's a body at baseline. We stress the body by cooling it off, having somebody stand in a room naked with just their underwear for 10 minutes. And then we retest the points. And it's a probe that takes the temperature of the dermatomes, and it's 128 points on the body. Every tissue and organ is tested. And then the body's cooled off for 10 minutes, and those points are retested to see how well every one of those points that relates to organs and meridians and tissues, how well they compensate or regulate for the stress that they're under, which is standing room cold for 10 minutes. If the body can do that, then you have health. If the body rises in chaos, so that should give you a shift in temperature from about a half a degree to a degree if there's proper regulation. If it's more than a degree, that's hyperregulation, a sign of allergy toxicity. Less than half a degree is hypo, beginning not to change. And rigid regulation is the worst kind of regulation, meaning there's no change. So if you think about the transmission in your car, and I won't go deep into this analogy because I'm not a car person, but you want to shift gears from first to second, third, fourth, fifth, depending on how fast your car is going. Right? Well, the body needs to do the same thing. It needs to shift gears depending on what's going on. And if I'm staying in a room cold, and then I want all my heat to go up to my brain and keep my brain warm, 1 degree warmer than the rest of my body. And if it does that, great. And if it doesn't, and it warms my right shoulder for my left shoulder for some reason, something's off, or this gets too hot, or then we're looking at why the body's doing that and what the patterns are. This has 9 points on it that test your lymphatics. And that's when I started to look at, like, it wasn't, oh, some of the people have lymphatic stagnancy, Dr. Jack. It was not the case. It was 100% of the people I was doing this test on, whether they came in with me, who was like, I felt great, had no symptoms, been drug-free for 10 years, did this test. And I looked like the person that read it to me said I was like a 75-year-old person that had all these issues. I was like, oh my God, I'm so sick, but I feel great, because it shows issues before blood would show. Right down to the stage 4 cancer person that showed up at our center that we did CRTs on, and we could know which way to head regardless of the diagnosis, and everybody in the middle. And what we saw was 100% of the people had stagnant lymph. And the first few years, I would tell people to dry brush and do rebounding and take these homeopathics and take these herbals. And I would retest 6 months, a year later, zero change. Well, I shouldn't say zero. Scientifically, no significant of a change from the lymphatics. Other things I had them do: castor oil packs, warming their liver, getting their amalgams out. Oh, the dental piece increased. The liver got improved. The kidneys improved. No change in the lymph. And then we start to try to detoxify them. They feel horrible. So I had to come up with ways to get that lymph to move in a different way. And I started studying with this woman in New Zealand, Desiree Despong, who I call her the lymph goddess. She's amazing. She has a ton of empirical based data and has been researching lymphs with cancer for years. And she has developed a new machine that we now use to get people into a deep state of parasympathetic, to get people to relax, because what we've realized through all the lymph work is that if people relax, their lymph moves. So let's get them to relax. Let's get engage their parasympathetic, their healing capacity of their body. And we just step back and watch the body do its job. And we've had amazing results with it. But that started this journey of the lymph, because I realized I couldn't help any other system in the body until the drainage opened. Once I opened the drainage, all of a sudden, whatever symptom they're dealing with, whatever diagnosis they were dealing with, the symptoms decreased, the regulation increased, their circadian rhythms increased, and they started towards regeneration. Because what I know, and I know you know as well, is we're not stagnant beings. We're ever evolving, ever changing, dynamic organisms that are an ecosystem that are either going towards health and regeneration, or we're degrading, going towards degeneration. We're not in the middle. So every day we make decisions to get up in the morning, drink our juices and do our yoga and our breath work and get our bodies tuned in. And then we eat carnivore diets throughout the day, or whatever the case may be, to help improve our health, knowing that we have the capacity to turn that on. And those are decisions we make. If we all of a sudden just say, screw it, I'm going to go eat at Dunkin' Donuts for breakfast, I'm going to go to McDonald's for lunch and Burger King for dinner, in a short amount of time, that's going to catch up with us, depending on how long you've been living this way. So it's not like, oh, I've arrived at health and now I'm healthy and it doesn't matter what I do. It always matters how we live our life. It always matters how we think. And so it always matters what we drain out. And that to me is the most important thing. Physical medicine is amazing, but we are 90% emotional beings having a physical experience. And 90% of all illness is emotional. And the lymph is absolutely about the physical body letting go, but it's really about the emotional body letting go. What are we willing to let go of? Our lymph will let go of it for us.
The Healthy Heart Show will be right back after we take this quick break to hear from our sponsor. Would you like to drink great tasting coffee that's also good for your heart health? Cardiology Coffee is your answer. This 5-star rated coffee is delicious. It's a gourmet coffee that begins with whole organic beans, hand-selected and carefully roasted. It's tested and certified to be free of pesticides, mold, and other toxins. Cardiology Coffee is great for your heart, and you're going to love how it tastes. Order now online at cardiologycoffee.com. Now back to the Healthy Heart Show.
Love the message, love the passion, love the energy. Kelly, so as we know, we recognize how important, of course, the lymphatic system is now. And what are some of those best strategies, therefore, now going forward to help, on our own, maybe on our own to be able to improve, the lymphatic system? And then how do we find a good professional to work with like yourself?
Thank you for the first and the second question. The second question I'm going to answer first. That is a challenge, I'll be honest. There is a lot of lymph body workers out there, but just like anything else, some people took a class, some people have devoted their life to it and continued to expand and devote their skills. The first question I'd ask when you're looking for a practitioner is how much lymph work do you do and what kind of training do you have? And if they say one school and I do it once a week, I would find another practitioner. If you find a practitioner that goes, that's all I do, and I've studied at Goddard and I've studied with Checkley and I've studied with Desiree Despong, well, then that's somebody I would talk to and they have a touch. I teach a lymph node release class, and I do have a fair amount of practitioners that have trained with myself and Desiree. So we do have a select group of people that I like to refer to, but I'm sure you feel the same way, Dr. Jack. I love referring people out, but I'm very picky about who I refer out to because I want to know that they're going to get the result that I'm accustomed to getting at our centers. In regards to what we can do, if we don't move, our lymph doesn't move. So the number one thing we have to do is move. And both of us are standing at a standing desk today, I can tell you, because we know it's not good to sit. And so moving your body is number one. If you're sitting at a desk every hour, get up and move your arms up over your head. We're pretty good at moving our legs at times, like, oh, let me move my hips, but we forget to lift our arms above our head. When you start to move, your skeletal muscles start to move and it starts to push the lymphatics. Unlike the cardiovascular system, the lymph doesn't have its own pump. So it only moves when our skeletal muscles move. So that's number one, move more. Number two, wear less tight fitting clothes. The tighter your clothes are, the more they're creating dams. So as we mentioned earlier, we have lymph from our head to our toes. If I have a wire bra on right here, I'm creating a dam and filling up my toxicants in my breast. So no more wire bras, ladies. Be done with them.
Well, I think, right there, just to touch on that real quick, obviously, breast cancer, I've got no doubt, although I think I saw a study from a couple of years ago that seemed to refute that, although I think that's, again, it's hard to find an objective control group that doesn't wear bras. It seems like all women wear bras. So therefore, again, they're all subject to increased breast cancer risk because you're saying that, let me say this just to kind of hammer home this point. Number one would be, lymphatic restriction, but then also the metal, wired bra, how does that conduct EMF? And then ultimately, right, the way that most women wash their garments, if they wash their bra in Tide and fabric softener and dryer sheets, now you've got this organ that is a living, breathing organ, if you will, which is the breast and the tissue that endocrine tissue that it is. And again, it absorbs in all those toxins, and now you can't get the toxins out because of the lack of lymphatic drainage systemically, but then also locally because of the constriction, and voila, you've got breast cancer.
100%. And then use your aluminum deodorant after you shave and nick yourself in the shower and put some chlorine in your armpits. And then you, put some aluminum deodorant, and you're just creating, and that's where the majority of women that get breast cancer get it right here. And there's a large lymph node right here, and your breast drains, like 75% of our breast lymphatic drains here, and about 25% drains up to this area and then up to our termini. So it is so important. Breast health is so important because we might argue that the breasts are needed as a woman, as a man with 4 children, that the breasts are absolutely needed. Biologically, breasts aren't needed. They're unnecessary. So it's a benign area for the body to store toxins, and it's a fatty tissue, and the body stores toxins in fats. So it makes perfect sense. And when you've been living this way for so long, I have not thought about the fabric softener and the detergent on the bras. Thank you for bringing that to my awareness. I don't think I've thought about that in 20 years. And so tight fitting clothes, and women that wear the tight fitting pants, My husband laughs every time I say this because I often jump into my jeans, ladies. I too jump into my jeans, but my jeans come off the second I get in that house, and I've got on loose fitting, flowy pants, and I don't wear them often at work either because I want a looser pant for being able to be more flexible throughout my day. If when I take my socks off, I've got lines on my ankles, then my lymph is clogged and stagnant, particularly. Yeah.
Let me stop you there. Sorry to interrupt you real quick. What do you think about the concept too of wearing graduated compression stockings? Is that something that we could universally apply? Well, let me say this, to a lot of people, or again, I think that if people kind of live their best life and do the things they need to do, the vast majority of people would not need graduated compression stockings. I mean, obviously, there's cardiovascular indications of which I use it and stuff like that. But obviously, even those people, again, if someone's a couch potato, they're going to collect fluid in their legs. If someone's up and moving around and, again, moving their body parts and therefore, creating circulation in the lymphatics and in the venous circulation, you're going to get rid of all the swelling and edema in those legs.
Yeah. I mean, Band-Aids is what I look at compression socks and stockings. They're Band-Aids. They're great for a time being, but if you're dependent upon them, then you haven't changed your lifestyle enough to not be dependent upon them. Same with supplements. Like, I think supplements are great, but they're supposed to be supplements, not for the rest of my life mints. And so I take supplements for a little bit of time until I've changed my lifestyle, my diet, my nutrition enough that I'm getting everything out of it that I need outside of minerals because the soils are so depleted. But I think compression socks are also great when we're knowing that we're going to be sitting for a long time, regardless of our health. Long car trips, flights. I don't get swelling on flights in cars because I drain my lymph. I manually pump my lymph. I'm sure people sitting in the car next to me are like, what the heck is she doing? But as I'm pumping my lymph, I know that I don't get that restless leg that I used to get on long car trips and long flights. So I never got swelling, but that could have just been because I was so young. I wasn't up to that point yet. But I think, listen, the last year and a half has proven to us how sick the general population is, particularly in America, right? I mean, what is this statistic? Like 88% of our population has a metabolic disorder, some ridiculous. I mean, that is ridiculous. Metabolic disorders are lifestyle problems. As we continue to correct how sick our population is, they will not be so dependent upon Band-Aids like compression socks and so forth. But if you need them in the meantime, great. I would also recommend throw your legs up the wall every morning when you get out of bed after you do some quick movements. I don't even call it exercise. I certainly don't call it yoga, although some people could look at me and go, I think that's a yoga pose. Maybe, but I'm not a yoga instructor, so I don't call it yoga. But I do movement every morning and I get my fascia moving, which we didn't talk about, but the fascia houses the lymph. The fascia is the skin under the skin, and the fascia needs to be moved as well, because otherwise it starts to create adhesions. And like, if I don't move my shoulder for a week, it's going to be harder after a week to move it out, right? Like, I broke my arm many years ago. And when I first took the cast off, it was like, oh, it feels so good to finally move that. But it takes some time to get range of motion back. If I sit like this all day, go to bed, watch TV, and never do this, the next time I do this, it's going to be like, because your fascia adhesions are breaking up. Now your lymph can flow. So we just need to get better at like dancing or moving in the morning and getting our blood flowing, our circulation of our lymphatics flowing, so that edema has somewhere to go. So we're not dependent upon compression socks.
Yes. All right, Kelly, wrap it.
Tight fitting clothes I like.
All right, wrap it up for me. I think you were going to do some more demo and show us some of your techniques that we can do at home.
Yeah, so I'm going to do this quick because I know we've been a little long today. So if you go to my Not Meds website, this is free. I have more explanation there on a video. I have a PDF. If you sign up for my email newsletter list, you get a PDF of exactly what I'm going to teach you now. This is a simple technique that any human being can do, and you can do this on children. You can also do this on pets, but I wore a specific shirt for y'all today, even though it's 32 degrees here in Pennsylvania, so I could show you how to do this. First of all, we all should have armpits. So a staff, but I have quite a few staff that have what look like these. These are called arm puffs. And if it's not concave, then you've got lymph stagnancy. This can also often happen at the back of your knees. A lot of women think that it's fatness. If we get these clumps right here, it's probably lymphatic stagnancy more than anything. So just know that it doesn't matter your size. You give me 350 pounds, you should still have an armpit. If not, you have lymph congestion. You can be 100 pounds soaking wet and have an arm puff. That means you have lymph stagnancy, because you don't have to have lymphedema to have a lymph problem. Okay. So number one is self-check. Do I have an armpit or puff? Do I have a knee pit or puff? Then I always end at the top, start at the end. So your termini, your lymphatic ends right here. So it's a line of the ears. I cross my hands because it's easier. I take my ring and my middle finger from my ears down, and I'm just going to, in a circular motion, gently pump this area. And I'm not going to push down like this. I'm going to roll it and kind of pump it as I'm rolling. Does that make sense? And don't worry if you're in the exact wrong, you can't be at the wrong location. It's somewhere in this area. You start stimulating your lymph. Going after, the lymph lives just below the skin level, needs a little stimulation. So I'm going to stimulate that in a circular. Then I'm going to go under my ears, under my jaw rather, like in front of my ears where the tonsils are. And I'm going to, again, roll down, just kind of pump about 5 pumps in each area. For those of you that have congestion, you'll already start to feel the drainage. Then I'm going to go to what are known as our apical nodes, where women have bra straps. And I'm going to pump both of those. And I'm going to imagine that draining up now to my termini here. So I opened up the exit doors, then I moved to my tonsils, opened up my tonsils to get those to drain down. So my head drains. Now I'm going to get the rest of my body to drain up. And I'm going to start with my apical nodes. And then I'm going to do my armpit, which I'm going to do my left side first. There's reasons for all this, but I'm not going into all that right now. But we take our 2 fingers. This one on the PDF is hard to understand, so I'm going to really explain it. So you put your fingers right in the center, and when you kind of push in, you can feel it's a little tender in there. That's your lymph node. You're going to close your armpit, but I'm going to lift mine so you can see what I'm going to do. What your job is to just pump, and you're pumping to where it's pushing that fluid from here to here and then from here to here. So it looks like on the PDF that I'm pulling it out, but it's just hard to explain in a one-dimensional picture. So I'm just kind of pump, 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 pump. And then I do my other side. Pump, pump. So it's I'm not pumping toward here. I'm pumping like up in the armpit toward my clavicle area from underneath. Does that make sense? Then the next area I'm going to do is the cisterna. So in between your belly button and like your rib cage, somewhere in the middle, you're just going to do the easiest thing is put your pinky in your belly button, lay your hand there, and then just take your 2 fingers and gently just pump your cisterna colli, which is a larger sac. It's not a node, but it's a larger sac of the lymph that your spleen and your liver drain into, and your inguinals, your lower lymph, all drain to the cisterna. So if you don't do any other points, do your termini and your cisterna. If you have time, 5 minutes, do everything you do. Termini, tonsils, apical node, armpits, cisterna, and then inguinals. And your inguinals are not, so here's my hip, here's my leg, it's on my leg side. So I'm going to go to my leg, I'm going to go up to my hip, and I'm going to start to make circular motions toward my hip, going all the way down to my inner thigh. It's kind of hard to see with black pants, to my inner thigh, and then coming back out. And then you do the other leg. There are a few other spots that I teach on the PDF. And then after you do your lymph node opening, you can then dry brush the same way. You always go towards the heart, but most people teach dry brushing starting at the feet and working up. Makes no sense to Kelly because you've got clogged doors. I got 50 cars lined up from my toes to here, and here's my toll booth. I'm going to open my toll booth and move the first car out. I'm not going to open my toll booth and ask the 50th car to come through the toll booth. It makes no sense. So you want to dry brush in that same way. You open up your node first. You don't have to open up all your nodes, but you could. At minimum, open up these 2 nodes and then start dry brushing. And you can use either the bumpy part or the brush part. And if you don't have this, just use a really dry old washcloth that's a little rough and just gently brush your skin with it. And it should be just a nice gentle pink that your skin gets, not red. That's too much. And I go from closest to my body to then farther away. Right? So basically you're creating a space of the traffic so that more traffic can then move up. And you're just sweeping the whole body, always going towards the heart, because the heart is what it's all about.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, and I think, too, even myself, I've been guilty of that when I have done the dry brush, which is not often, but when I've done the dry brush over the years, right, intuitively, you would think, oh, I'm going to start in the bottom and just start pushing everything up. But like you said, it's like, it doesn't work that way. If everything is all clogged up, there's nowhere to push it up into, and therefore it just stays all in one place. So it start from the top, start at the core, if you will. Kelly Kennedy, this has been absolutely fantastic. Just a great primer, 101 into the lymphatic system. And again, no matter what people's health issues are, no matter what their health concerns are, this makes me think of all of our people. Again, atrial fibrillation, high blood pressure, cholesterol, coronary disease. I know, Kelly, you don't like to, make any medical claims, but I like to, and I like to say, that again, the information we're giving right here is going to really help a lot of people with their specific cardiovascular condition. Kelly, tell me again the best way for all of our people to find more information about you.
So The Beats is my podcast. I'd love for everybody to subscribe to that. We have about 80 episodes strong. And so you can find that anywhere you listen to podcasts. It's also found on the Not Meds Global website, which notmedsglobal.com is where we host the podcast, but it's also where we have information about the lymphatics, a lot of free videos, a lot of great content, and just education. And then the True Wellness Center is our brick and mortar practice here in Pennsylvania as well as South Carolina. And anywhere they can email me at either of those spots, but Kelly at Not Meds Global or Kelly at the True Wellness Center, either one works.
Fantastic. Kelly Kennedy, that was awesome. Another episode of the Healthy Heart Show in the books. I'm Dr. Jack Wolfson, the natural heart doctor, and this is your home for your 100-year heart. And that's what we're all about, is making sure that you live your best and longest life. And again, we appreciate all of you, your time and your support and your energy. We will see you back next time with another fantastic episode. Be well.
That does it for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the Healthy Heart Show. Please help us get the word out by liking and subscribing to our podcast and our Facebook page, Natural Heart Doctor. Please show support for our podcast sponsor, Cardiology Coffee, your resource for organic, antioxidant-rich, mold and pesticide-free coffee shipped straight to your door. Learn more by adding @cardiologycoffee on Instagram and visiting cardiologycoffee.com. This podcast provides materials for information and educational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. We encourage you to contact your physician for any of the health issues discussed here.